At the will reading, they left me nothing. But Grandpa's secret changed everything. The air in the dimly lit study was thick with tension, a palpable weight that pressed down on Eleanor's shoulders as she sat stiffly in the antique leather chair. The room smelled of aged wood and faded memories, its walls lined with dusty tomes and family portraits whose painted eyes seemed to judge her from their gilded frames. She could feel the stares of her relatives boring into her back, cold, calculating glances filled with disdain and pity. Her hands trembled slightly as they rested on her lap, fingers twisting together like fragile vines caught in an unforgiving storm. Across the mahogany table, Mr. Hargrove, the family attorney, cleared his throat for what felt like the 100th time that afternoon. His voice droned on, reading aloud the contents of Grandpa William's will, a document that had been both anticipated and dreaded by everyone present. Eleanor listened numbly as name after name was called, each accompanied by generous bequests, properties, stocks, heirlooms, all tokens of wealth and legacy passed down through generations. Yet when it came to her turn, there was nothing but silence. A deafening void where recognition should have been. And finally, Mr. Hargrove continued, his tone clipped and professional despite the palpable shift in the atmosphere, to Eleanor Margaret Hawthorne nothing. Her breath hitched at the words, sharp and unyielding, slicing through her chest like shards of glass. Nothing. Not even a trinket or sentimental keepsake. It wasn't just the absence of material wealth that stung, it was the implication behind it, the finality of rejection etched plainly into those two syllables. Around her, whispers erupted like wildfire, cruel murmurs disguised as condolences. Poor thing, someone muttered under their breath, Aunt Beatrice perhaps? Though the lack of sincerity made it sound more like mockery than sympathy. Others exchanged smug glances, their expressions betraying a mixture of relief and triumph. After all, Eleanor had always been the black sheep of the family, the one who didn't quite fit into the polished mold of privilege and expectation. She clenched her jaw, fighting back tears that threatened to spill over. This wasn't supposed to happen. Grandpa William had been different from the rest of them. He'd been kind, patient, and endlessly curious about the world beyond the confines of their gilded cage. Unlike her parents, who dismissed her dreams as impractical fantasies, he had encouraged her love for art and storytelling, often sneaking her sketchbooks and novels when no one else was looking. How could he leave her with nothing? As the meeting drew to a close, Eleanor rose mechanically, avoiding eye contact with anyone as she slipped out of the room. The hallway outside offered little solace. The grandeur of the ancestral home only served to remind her of how out of place she truly was. She wandered aimlessly until she found herself standing before the library door, the same library where she and Grandpa William used to spend hours talking about everything and nothing. Pushing it open, she stepped inside, seeking refuge in the familiar scent of old books and polished oak. It was here, amidst towering shelves lined with forgotten stories, that she noticed something peculiar. Tucked between two heavy volumes on the bottom shelf lay a small wooden box, its surface worn smooth with age. Curiosity tugged at her, and she knelt down to retrieve it. The box was heavier than expected, its lid secured by a delicate brass clasp. Inside, nestled among faded photographs and yellowed letters, lay an envelope addressed to her in Grandpa William's unmistakable scrawl. Her heart skipped a beat as she carefully unfolded the letter within. The handwriting was shaky yet deliberate, each word imbued with a sense of urgency and purpose. My dearest Eleanor, if you are reading this, then I am gone, and the world has likely conspired to make you believe you are unworthy. Let me assure you now, you are worth far more than any title or treasure this family can offer. What I leave you is not bound by paper or gold, but by trust and truth. Eleanor's hands shook as she read on, her pulse quickening with every line. The letter spoke of secrets buried deep within the family history, truths obscured by greed and ambition. At first, she thought it might be some sort of elaborate joke, a final act of mischief from a man known for his playful spirit. But as she delved deeper into the contents of the box, uncovering maps, cryptic notes, and fragments of correspondence, doubt began to give way to intrigue. Among the items was a folded map marked with strange symbols and coordinates, leading to locations scattered across the country. Another note hinted at a hidden fortune, not merely financial wealth but something far greater, knowledge, freedom, and perhaps redemption. Each clue seemed designed to guide her toward uncovering not only the mystery itself but also her own strength and resilience. That night, unable to sleep, Eleanor sat cross-legged on her bedroom floor, surrounded by the artifacts from the box. Moonlight streamed through the window, casting eerie shadows across the walls as she pieced together the fragments of information. For years, She had struggled to find her place in a world that constantly reminded her of her shortcomings. Now, for the first time, she felt a spark of determination ignite within her, a quiet defiance fueled by the belief that maybe, just maybe, Grandpa William had seen something in her that others hadn't. By dawn, exhaustion weighed heavily on her eyelids, but her mind raced with possibilities. The journey ahead would be fraught with challenges, she knew that much. There would be obstacles, betrayals, and moments of doubt. Yet, as she traced her fingers over the map once more, she couldn't shake the feeling that this was her chance, not just to reclaim what had been taken from her, but to forge a new path entirely. The following days blurred together in a whirlwind of preparation. Eleanor pored over the documents, committing every detail to memory while devising a plan of action. She reached out to contacts she hadn't spoken to in years, gathering resources and information discreetly. Every step brought her closer to unraveling the enigma left behind by Grandpa William, though she remained cautious, aware that others might seek to exploit the same secrets for their gain. One evening, as she pored over a particularly cryptic journal entry, a knock at her door startled her. Standing on the threshold was Mrs. Abernathy, the elderly neighbor who had watched over her during childhood summers spent at the family estate. Her wrinkled face bore an expression of concern mingled with curiosity. "I heard about the will," Mrs. Abernathy said softly, stepping inside without waiting for an invitation. "Your grandfather loved you dearly, Eleanor. Whatever he's left you, I suspect it's meant to set you free." Free. The word resonated deeply, stirring emotions she hadn't allowed herself to acknowledge. Wasn't that what she had always wanted, to break free from the suffocating expectations imposed upon her? To live a life true to herself rather than dictated by others? With renewed resolve, Eleanor embraced the challenge before her. She began retracing the steps outlined in the map, starting with a remote cabin nestled deep within the Appalachian Mountains. The journey proved arduous, testing her endurance and resolve at every turn. Harsh weather conditions, treacherous terrain, and lingering doubts threatened to derail her progress. Yet, with each milestone reached, she grew stronger, more confident in her ability to navigate the unknown. Inside the cabin, she discovered another piece of the puzzle, a locked chest containing additional clues alongside a heartfelt message from Grandpa William. "You've come farther than most would dare," it read. "Trust yourself, Eleanor. You carry the keys to unlock not only these mysteries, but also your own destiny." Tears pricked at the corners of her eyes as she absorbed the words, feeling the weight of his faith in her abilities. Slowly, she inserted the key found earlier into the lock, her heart pounding with anticipation. As the lid creaked open, revealing yet another layer of complexity, she realized this quest was about more than material riches. It was about rediscovering her identity, piece by painstaking piece. Back home, whispers of her disappearance spread like wildfire among the family. Some speculated she had fled in shame, unable to face the humiliation of being disinherited. Others whispered conspiratorially about potential motives, convinced she harbored ulterior designs. Only Aunt Beatrice ventured to visit, her demeanor unusually subdued. "Eleanor," she began hesitantly, perching on the edge of a chair as if afraid to linger too long. "I don't understand why Father excluded you, but I know he cared for you deeply. If there's anything I can do." Though touched by the rare display of empathy, Eleanor maintained a careful distance, unwilling to divulge the truth. Instead, she thanked her aunt politely before excusing herself, retreating to the sanctuary of her makeshift research station. Here, surrounded by maps, journals, and half-finished sketches, she continued piecing together the intricate web woven by Grandpa William. Each discovery brought fresh revelations, shedding light on aspects of the family's past long buried beneath layers of deceit and ambition. Tales of courage and sacrifice emerged alongside darker narratives of betrayal and greed, painting a complex portrait of lineage and legacy. Through it all, Eleanor remained steadfast, driven by a growing conviction that the answers she sought held the power to transform not only her own life but potentially the lives of those around her. Yet, as weeks turned into months, the strain began to show. Sleep eluded her, haunted by vivid dreams of shadowy figures pursuing her through endless corridors. Meals were skipped, replaced by hurried snacks consumed between bouts of intense concentration. Friends expressed concern, urging her to take breaks, to prioritize self-care. But how could she pause when so much hung in the balance? One particularly grueling day, as frustration mounted over a seemingly unsolvable riddle, she stumbled upon an unexpected ally. Thomas, a local historian with a penchant for uncovering forgotten tales, offered his expertise without hesitation. Together, they pored over ancient texts and obscure records, their combined efforts yielding breakthroughs neither could have achieved alone. "You remind me of him," Thomas remarked one evening, referring to Grandpa William. "He always believed history held lessons we couldn't afford to ignore." Eleanor smiled faintly, warmed by the comparison. Perhaps that was part of the magic woven into this journey, the realization that she carried pieces of her grandfather within her, guiding her steps even now. As autumn gave way to winter, the trail led her to a sprawling estate shrouded in mist and mystery. Here, amidst crumbling ruins and overgrown gardens, she uncovered the final pieces of the puzzle. Clues converged, forming a coherent narrative that challenged everything she thought she knew about her family, and herself. But even as the truth came into focus, questions lingered. What awaited her beyond this point? Could she truly embrace the freedom promised by Grandpa William, or would the weight of responsibility prove too great to bear? These uncertainties swirled within her, mingling with excitement and trepidation as she prepared to take the next step. Standing atop a hill overlooking the estate, Eleanor took a deep breath, letting the crisp air fill her lungs. Below, shadows danced across the landscape, hinting at secrets still hidden, stories yet untold. With the wind whispering encouragement, she descended, ready to confront whatever lay ahead. The estate loomed before her, its grandeur muted by time and neglect. Vines snaked up the stone facade, their gnarled tendrils clinging to weathered walls like desperate hands reaching for something long lost. The air carried a faint scent of damp earth and decaying leaves, mingling with a metallic tang of rust from the iron gates that creaked open as she pushed them aside. It felt surreal, like stepping into one of the old fairy tales Grandpa William used to read aloud during their quiet evenings together. Eleanor's boots crunched against gravel as she made her way toward the entrance, each step stirring memories she had tried to bury alongside the pain of rejection. This place wasn't unfamiliar, it was part of the family lore, whispered about in hushed tones at gatherings but rarely visited. Known simply as Blackthorne Manor, it had been abandoned decades ago after a fire claimed much of its interior. Yet here she stood, drawn by the final coordinates on the map and the promise of answers hidden within its crumbling holes. As she crossed the threshold, the weight of history pressed down on her. Faded tapestries hung askew on the walls, their once vivid colors now dulled to ghostly hues. Dust motes swirled in shafts of light streaming through cracked windows, casting an ethereal glow over the scene. She pulled out her flashlight, its beam cutting through the gloom as she ventured deeper into the manor's labyrinthine corridors. Her heart quickened when she reached what appeared to be the library, a cavernous room lined with sagging bookshelves, many of which had collapsed under the weight of forgotten knowledge. In the center stood a large oak desk, its surface scarred by age and charred edges hinting at the fire's fury. On it lay an object that stopped her cold, a leather-bound journal identical to the one she'd found earlier, except this one bore no marks or symbols. Instead, embossed in gold lettering across the cover were the words "For Eleanor." Her breath hitched as she picked it up, running her fingers over the smooth leather. Inside, the pages were filled with Grandpa William's handwriting, though the tone was different, more urgent, almost frantic. He spoke of decisions made in haste, choices forced upon him by circumstances beyond his control. There were cryptic references to the others and warnings about trusting those who claimed kinship without understanding loyalty. But it was the last entry that sent shivers coursing through her veins. "Eleanor, my brave girl, if you've come this far, then I know you're ready for the truth. What lies beneath this house is not just a treasure, it's a reckoning. Find the key hidden in plain sight, and let it guide you to the vault. Trust no one, not even yourself, until you see what I have left behind." A reckoning. The word echoed in her mind, heavy with implication. Reckonings weren't meant to bring peace, they demanded accountability, demanded facing the shadows head-on. And yet, there was no turning back now. Not when every fiber of her being screamed that this was where her journey would culminate. She scoured the room methodically, searching for anything resembling a key. Her gaze swept over the desk, the shelves, even the floorboards beneath her feet. Nothing seemed amiss, until she noticed a loose tile near the baseboard. Dropping to her knees, she pried it loose with trembling hands, revealing a small compartment containing a brass skeleton key. Clutching it tightly, she retraced her steps to the main hall, guided by instinct rather than logic. At the foot of the grand staircase, she spotted a section of wall slightly discolored compared to the rest. Pressing her palm against it, she felt a faint click. A hidden panel swung inward, revealing a narrow spiral staircase descending into darkness. The descent was claustrophobic, the air growing colder with each step. When she finally emerged into a vast underground chamber, her breath caught in her throat. The space was illuminated by flickering torches mounted along the walls, casting eerie shadows that danced across rows of ancient artifacts and chests overflowing with coins, jewels, and documents. But it wasn't the wealth that held her attention. It was the massive iron door set into the far wall, engraved with intricate patterns reminiscent of the map she'd followed thus far. Approaching cautiously, Eleanor inserted the key into the lock. With a groan of protest, the mechanism turned, and the door swung open to reveal a smaller chamber bathed in soft, golden light. At its center rested a pedestal, atop which sat a single envelope bearing her name. Inside was another letter from Grandpa William, shorter but infinitely more poignant than the others. My dearest Eleanor, you've proven yourself worthy of truths most would shy away from. What I leave you is not merely fortune but freedom, the freedom to rewrite your story, to reshape our legacy. Use it wisely, for power such as this carries great responsibility. Remember always that true wealth lies not in gold or jewels, but in courage, compassion, and conviction. With all my love, Grandpa William. Tears blurred her vision as she folded the letter carefully and tucked it into her pocket. For the first time since the will reading, she allowed herself to cry, not out of sorrow or anger, but out of gratitude. Gratitude for a man who had seen her potential when others dismissed her, who had entrusted her with a mission far greater than material gain. Yet even as relief washed over her, new questions arose. Who were the others he had mentioned? Why had he gone to such lengths to conceal these truths? And what exactly did he mean by reshaping our legacy? Before she could dwell too deeply on these thoughts, a sound startled her, a faint scraping noise coming from somewhere above. Her pulse quickened as she realized she was no longer alone. Someone else had followed her trail. Heart pounding, Eleanor extinguished the torches and slipped behind a towering stack of crates, her mind racing. Whoever it was, they moved with purpose, their footsteps echoing ominously through the chamber. Peering around the edge of her hiding spot, she caught a glimpse of a shadowy figure approaching the iron door. They paused briefly, examining the lock before producing a key of their own. Panic surged within her, but so did determination. This was her discovery, her inheritance, not theirs. Steeling herself, she crept silently toward the exit, careful to avoid detection. As she ascended the staircase, her thoughts churned. If someone else knew about the vault, then perhaps the secrets buried here extended beyond her family's history. Perhaps they touched lives far beyond her own. Back in the library, she grabbed the journal and hurried outside, the chill of the evening air grounding her. She needed allies, people she could trust implicitly. Thomas came to mind immediately, his expertise invaluable in navigating the tangled threads of history. But she also thought of Mrs. Abernathy, whose kindness had offered solace during darker times. Together, they might uncover the full scope of what Grandpa William had entrusted to her. Over the next few days, Eleanor shared her findings sparingly, gauging reactions carefully. To her relief, both Thomas and Mrs. Abernathy agreed to help, their curiosity piqued by the implications of her discoveries. Working collaboratively, they pieced together fragments of information pointing to a conspiracy that spanned generations, a web of deceit woven by powerful figures intent on controlling not just wealth but influence. Each revelation brought fresh challenges. Threats arrived in the form of anonymous letters and unsettling phone calls, warning her to abandon her quest. Shadows seemed to follow her everywhere, forcing her to adopt a heightened sense of vigilance. Yet through it all, she remained resolute, buoyed by the knowledge that she was honoring her grandfather's wishes. One evening, as they gathered in her makeshift study, Thomas voiced a concern that had been nagging at him. "Eleanor," he said hesitantly, "what happens when we reach the end of this trail? Once the truth comes to light, there's no going back." She looked at him, then at Mrs. Abernathy, whose expression mirrored his unease. Taking a deep breath, she replied, "Then we face it together. Whatever the cost, whatever the consequences, we owe it to ourselves, and to him, to see this through." And so, fortified by resolve and camaraderie, they pressed onward, driven by the belief that the past held lessons crucial to shaping the future. The journey ahead promised danger and uncertainty, but Eleanor embraced it wholeheartedly, knowing that every step brought her closer to fulfilling the destiny her grandfather had envisioned for her. What awaited them at the end of the trail remained unknown, but one thing was certain: nothing would ever be the same again.